Welcome to H360 Health Talk. Well, today I'm joined by Amy Rubin. Amy has been a guest on our show before. I'm sure she looks very familiar to you. She came in last time and talked to us about mindfulness and what she's doing in that area. It was a really good segment. I learned a lot. But today she's going to talk to us about manifestLETS, which is a new company that she started with her sister in honor of her father that recently passed away. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here again.
So it's been a while since you were on our show last time. How is it going with your mindfulness and mindful self business?
It has been such a learning lesson. I have worked more like a student over the past couple of months than I have a teacher. And as you know, I left the teaching profession to pursue my passion for mindfulness. So it has, my goal over the past year was not only to be able to practice my craft, but also to be able to learn in the process. And I would say that I have accomplished both of those things. I have not only been able to, and fortunate enough to work with different schools, but I also started working with different corporations and doing lunch and learns. So the most meaningful part for me has really been working with families and working with individuals and doing some mindfulness coaching, because that's enabled me to be able to work with students, which is one of my passions, but also to be able to be the change and provide them with the strategies and the tools that I wish I knew when I was younger, and empowering those parents with those strategies and tools to work with their children.
Well, I think you're making an impact, and it's working, because I'm hearing more and more, not only people and patients going through a health journey talking about mindfulness, but I'm starting to hear the medical professionals, the doctors, the NPs, the PAs, the RNs, begin to talk about how to incorporate mindfulness, exercise, mental well-being into the overall healthcare regimen. So I think, when you start to see that, the ship is beginning to turn in favor of what you're trying to do, and the awareness building that's occurring, I think, is really, really great.
Yeah, it's really exciting. When I first started doing work with mindfulness and doing personal and professional development workshops, I spent most of my efforts talking about what mindfulness is. And now it's sort of shifted a little bit into more of what mindfulness is not, because as it has become more pop culture and slated as being, the next best thing, people have sometimes some preconceived notions about, what it requires for them to be able to practice. And so helping them to understand that one moment of mindfulness a day is better than none, and that the benefits are not just for yourself, but it has a ripple effect just like anything else. And so many times when I talk to families, especially, parents will say, "Did this change your children?" And in a sordid way, it kind of has, but more importantly, it's changed me, which then changes my experience and my relationship and everything. It's changed our family as a result of that. Yeah. So it's really exciting when you can start to see that something that can be so simple and something that can be done and is just a few minutes a day can really have such powerful impacts with only positive side effects.
I'm glad you brought that up, because you're so right. I mean, there are a lot of misconceptions about what mindfulness is and how you practice it. And a lot of people immediately jump to, well, I don't have time to go to a formal structured class on mindfulness. And that's really not what it's about.
Right. And my goal over this past year has been to make mindfulness accessible, to make it relatable, and to make it be sustainable. And so making it accessible, helping people to understand that it's not so much changing what we do, it can be a simple little shift in how we do the things we already do, right? So whether your mindfulness practice is your morning cup of coffee that you're drinking mindfully, or walking your dog mindfully. Or I have a patient or a client that I work with who she devoted and made a goal to walk up and down her stairs mindfully on a daily basis, and recognize that not only did it change her relationship with her stairs, and she didn't begrudge it as much, but she started to recognize that that was her practice for the day. And she was like, it's already something I do 1,000,000 times a day, and now I'm doing it more mindfully, and hence being able to reap those benefits. So it is something that can be something that I'm not saying it's easy, right? Let's decipher between easy and simple, but it can be much more simple than we sometimes like to think.
Yeah. So now you founded manifestLETS.
Yes.
Am I saying that right? manifestLETS.
Yeah.
So tell me a little about what that is, how that works, and then we'll kind of shift and talk about how mindfulness and what you're doing with Mindful Self and manifestLETS kind of
Go together.
weave in together.
Yeah. So the last time that I was here, my dad actually accompanied me, and he was given a 6-month prognosis after being diagnosed with end-stage liver cancer. And he turned 6 months of a prognosis into 4 years of living. And he just recently passed away in March. And during that time, the original reason that I started practicing mindfulness was because I just wanted to be able to be with him, to spend time with him, which was something that was really difficult when you are facing that anticipatory grief, knowing that you're going to lose someone. And then, as a result of practicing mindfulness and being with him and spending time with him and being able to find joy in those struggling, difficult, uncomfortable situations where you recognize the suffering not only of him, but also that you're experiencing as well, we as a family unit really became a lot more spiritual. And so not so much in the terms of, being more religious, but just in the sense of, I used to always carry things in my pockets, and I still do. And this today I brought with me because this is really where where manifestLETS got its start. So this is a bee charm that I had bought for my dad, and it is a symbol of teamwork, but also hard work and perseverance, right, and tenacity. And so I had given it to him when he was first diagnosed. And as his condition, worsened after Christmas, he was in hospice. And so when I was at home gathering a few things to bring to the hospice facility, I grabbed this bee charm and I stuck it in my pocket because it had become, something I wanted to have. Long story short, after my dad had passed away, my mom got really sick, and was in the hospital, and they weren't sure what was the matter with her. As a result of being a caregiver and not having any sleep and round-the-clock care that we were trying to provide for him at home, she wound up being hospitalized for what was a really, really, really severe case of pneumonia. And as a result, she was on ventilators and on breathing devices and couldn't get out of her bed, and was in the hospital for close to 3 weeks. And it was one of those days that I was rushing to get to the hospital to be there with her so that I could be there in time for a procedure that she was having done. And as I was getting ready, I couldn't find my bee charm. And I was to the point of being, this crazy woman running around my house,
Sure.
where the heck can this bee charm be? It has become something that was so important to me. And if there was ever a day I needed the presence of my dad, it was today. And I was on my hands and knees, at my mercy, looking for this bee charm, which I did happen to find. It was in the pant pocket of the clothes I was wearing. And when I hung it up, it fell out. So it was in the bottom of my closet. But it was this epiphany moment of there needs to be a better way to do this.
Sure.
And that was kind of where the idea of, as I get ready each day, that I have whatever it is that's important to me. And so I had talked to my sister about the need for intentional wear. And that was really kind of where the idea of coming up with something that we could put on each day that we couldn't lose, that's not going to fall out of our pocket, that's not something so tiny, but as we get ready each day, that we have it with us no matter where we go. And that's where the idea of manifestLETS kind of came to be.
That's an amazing story.
Oh, thank you.
I want to go back, though, because you hit on a couple of points that I'm really curious about. And you said, when your father was first diagnosed, he was given 6 months and he got 4 years of life out of that 6 months. When you think about mindfulness and you think about the journey that you've been on, and you think about going back 4 years when you first heard those words about that diagnosis, looking back now, now that you're an expert and you're a teacher in mindfulness and mindful self, were there triggers or were there signs that said, now is when I need to begin this mindfulness journey? Because I talk to so many people and they go through the range of emotions when they get the diagnosis, right? First it's denial. And I'm not an expert in all the series of emotions, but then it comes to a point where there's acceptance. And some people get there sooner, and some people get there longer, and some people never get there. But are there some telltale or signs that one or one's loved one could look for earlier in that emotional journey that says now would be a good time to think about or practice mindfulness, because over the long haul it's going to help you?
Well, you asked some really good questions in there, and it makes me think, for me, it was that awareness and something I learned in one of the very first mindfulness classes that I took that really resonated with me, where the teacher talked about how if we don't allow ourselves to feel suffering, then we can't expect to feel joy. And that really resonated with me, because if I was working so hard to kind of build walls so that I didn't feel the pain and the sadness and the worry and the anticipatory grief of such a terrible diagnosis, then I obviously was also keeping out the opportunities for joy and gratitude and happiness and present living, right? So for me, that was a telltale. That got me
So
from,
say that
from, for the first
one more
step.
time.
We can't accept to feel joy if we don't allow ourselves to feel suffering.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and it just made so much sense. It was an aha moment for me, and explained why I was struggling so much to be able to spend time with him and make memories and be fully present and find the joy in those situations. So for me, that was a huge piece. But I think that the ultimate goal of mindfulness is to develop that awareness, to develop the awareness not only of what's going on right now in this current situation, but to accept whatever it is. So many times, and as you come to learn, we create the majority of the suffering that we experience in our lives, not because we have a thought, but because we perseverate on that thought, and we then worry about that thought, and we can't get that thought out of our minds, and then it turns into this mood or this funk or whatever it may be. Whereas when we practice mindfulness, we recognize that thoughts and emotions and sensations, they rise, and if we really don't do anything with them, they wash away. They rise and fall in as little as 60 to 90 seconds. And so the more that we practice formally sitting, the more that we have the opportunity to notice that. And so we're developing that awareness of, yes, this is a terrible situation, or yes, I feel extreme sadness. I mean, now after the passing of my dad, grief comes, but it also goes. And there might be moments that I'm driving in my car, that a song comes on, or that something just strikes me that reminds me of him. And that emotion comes and it sweeps over me enough to sometimes make me pull over to the side of the road. And then I realize that within a little bit of time, if I just allow myself to feel it, it goes, and I get back on the road and continue my day.
So as you're going through the journey and you're practicing mindfulness, you're helping create those future happy memories,
Right.
because we all know we're all going to pass, right? It's just a matter of time.
Right.
But we're all going to go through that process. And then once, whatever your religious or affiliation or your beliefs are, whether you're buried or cremated or whatever you're choosing, once you get past that kind of first initial period of grieving, those mindfulness happy memories that you've created along the journey are there to help fulfill you for the rest of your life until you pass. I mean, is that saying
it
that
also
correctly?
makes me, and I think my children as well, more available to realize that although my dad is not physically here anymore, that he's still with us in all different ways.
Well, Amy, thank you for being here today, and we look forward to talking to you more.
Thank you.